Okay, yeah. So there's this infinite loop thing that Google never solves. So all right, cool. So I think we're recording. What did someone say? Okay, notice. Okay. Yeah, but Skype solved it, so I don't know. Maybe they just left it there as an inside joke. I don't know. All right. So next slide. This is not me. This is Trina. So Trina, how many of you guys know Trina? So she's the other iOS teacher. She was actually my teacher, and I actually took this class, and she was my teacher. She's the most positive person you'll ever meet, especially in computer science. She's super positive, and she'll be actually lecturing for one class next week, and I'll explain why a little bit later. But she's really influential in the ITP community. She's been teaching here for, I think, 8 years, so pretty long time. And while she was teaching here, she also got her master's at the same time. So that was pretty admirable. So yeah, she's kind of my mentor. She's my teacher. Really awesome person. Okay, so this is me. I graduated from USC 2014 as a business major, minored in computer science. That's a picture of me when I was still a business major, and I never wore a suit since. So let's walk through a little bit of my journey here. So I started off at a startup called Tapiture. It was basically like a Pinterest, but geared towards the male demographics, and there's an e-commerce shop to it. I started off there. When I entered, there was like 200,000 users, and near the end of Tapiture, it was me and a team of 5 engineers that scaled the platform from 200,000 to 2 million users. And I get to basically play around with a lot of different technologies in like iOS, Android, Java, like a lot of different technologies there. So I learned a ton during my time at Tapiture. And then I spent half a year working as a software engineer at USC's Research Institute. So for those of you guys that don't know, USC has a research institute. It's in Marina Del Rey, the Information Sciences Institute. And I was there primarily as a front-end engineer working with AngularJS to help them build a front-end application that helps researchers and scientists like better organize their data. And I got bored again. And during my time at Tapiture, I spent a year teaching at a place called General Assembly. How many of you guys have heard of that place? General Assembly is a super cool place. So basically, it's a 12-week boot camp, and it's a part-time boot camp, so it's at night. And people from all different backgrounds, they're working full-time jobs or they can be students. They come into this 12-week program, and they learn how to build an iOS app. So I spent a year there teaching Swift development. So I taught a group of people who were super motivated to like give away time in their personal lives, and they paid a lot of money for these classes. And at the end of it, they learned to like build the app of their dreams, or to take another step in like the software that they want to build. So I was an instructor there at General Assembly, and I've been teaching here at USC for about this is my 3rd class, so about a year. So you're here right now. So we're at USC, and currently my job is a senior full stack / iOS developer at a place called Boston Consulting Group Digital Ventures, BCGDV. How many of you guys have heard of Boston Consulting Group? So if you're in business school, it's a pretty big name. It's one of the most prestigious consulting companies. So BCG is this think tank, right? They solve the most difficult problems for the Fortune 500, 100 companies in terms of strategy and operation. So they give us like really hard problems, and we solve it for them. That's what consulting firms do. And over the decades, BCG has built up this reputation for themselves. And one day someone came along and thought, why not take the BCG think tank and the clientele that we have, like these Fortune 500 companies, and work together and build disruptive startups in the industries that they're choosing. So BCG provides the engineers, the designers, the product people, the consultants, and these corporate partners like Coca-Cola, Nike, Starbucks. They provide things that only startups can dream of. They provide distribution channels. They provide marketing. They provide networking. They provide money. They provide a lot of money. And together we form startups that disrupt different industries that these corporate partners are interested in. So let me show you a little video on what we do at DV. Let's see, is it here? Cool. All right, so this is gonna be a lot of information at first, so don't be obsessed with taking in all the information. Just this will give you a gist of it. So this is an introduction to my company, BCG DV.
We're in a decade where corporates are being disrupted through the speed and change of technology and the audacity of startups. We believe the next horizon of growth is going to come from those very same corporates that realize growth will come in two ways: horizontal growth, re-engineering, reimagining your core business, and vertical growth, finding new growth areas.
We are BCG Digital Ventures. We are an industry-first corporate venture capital firm, and we build businesses that will change the world. We are an ever-growing team of innovators, operators, entrepreneurs, and investors. We invent, incubate, scale, and invest in game-changing businesses in partnership with the world's leading brands and companies. We have 5 offerings: our globally networked centers for innovation, incubation, and commercialization, R&D and acceleration programs like DV Hatch and DV Torque, and investment vehicles DV Capital and B Capital Group. We have 4 growth methods, 2 focused on growing new businesses, and 2 focused on scaling existing businesses. We incubate these businesses in 3 ways: in collaboration with a corporate partner, or through internal and external startup teams that eventually partner with a corporate. We then scale businesses in 2 ways: commercial deals tied to performance and equity deals where we co-invest. We look for one leading partner. We do not build competitive business, and we are unique in that everything we build and invest in will have a corporate exit. We have 4 full-scale centers and 7 satellite hatches and labs across the globe, and many more planned. We have over 300 dedicated entrepreneurs, operators, and investors, and when coupled with BCG's expertise, we are north of 600 people, giving us global scale. This year alone, we've developed thousands of digital and physical concepts and refined them into hundreds of different MVPs. We have nearly 30 active ventures worldwide and launched over 10 new businesses. These include re-engineering efforts, reimagining new revenue streams, creating digital attackers, and inventing entirely new businesses. Each of these ventures is a startup in a box, a hand-picked team with the experience, passion, and skills to rapidly bring a new concept to reality, iterate to find product-market fit, and scale the new business to drive commercial success. Our corporate partners work with us because we offer world-class talent with unparalleled resources, have a track record of market success, and access to risk capital that aligns our incentives to drive growth together.
Let me leave you with 3 questions. Are you ready to use your assets in a new way? Are you ready to build a portfolio of new growth? Are you ready to play some offense?
We are BCG Digital Ventures, and together we'll build businesses that change the world.
Cool. So that's like the gist of the company that I'm working in right now. And they actually filmed that in our office. So I actually work in that office in Manhattan Beach. So that's the gist of what we do at BCG DV. We're different from BCG because we not only do the consulting, but we execute on them. We incubate businesses and we build startups with the advice that we give. So we carry out the execution phase, which is really interesting. I like to be a full stack engineer. So I've built production level apps on Rails, on Spring MVC with Java, Objective-C, iOS, in Android and SQL, MongoDB, Swift, Unity with like AR, VR, as well as video game development. And I built a couple of Node.js apps on the back end. So if you guys have any questions at all, not just iOS, but software development in general, if you want to build an Android app or a web app or a virtual augmented reality app, you feel free to ask me anything. I love to help and support you any way I can. Let's have a throwback slide right here. So this is me in my dorm room when I took ITP 342. And this was me programming in Objective-C. And back then I had an idea for an app. And this was the first time that after months of learning Objective-C, of learning iOS development, I finally was able to build an app, and it came to life in the palm of my hands. And that was like a really magical experience, to really have your creation come to life and know that you're really a button away from distributing this app to millions of people. This is a really incredible feeling, and I hope that you guys can have that as well. Let's see here. So during my time at GA, I built a bunch of tutorials for my students, and they ended up taking off a little bit. So I decided, why not make it into a YouTube channel for anyone to learn iOS software development or the Swift programming language. So I have a YouTube channel called Swift from Scratch. It doesn't matter what your background is. You can go to this channel and just watch through every video, and you'll learn like software, you'll learn iOS, you'll learn Swift. Please like and subscribe. Yeah. So and sharing is important. So I'm counting on you guys to grow my user base. So if you go to a website, it's going to be on Blackboard. But if you go to fromscratch.tv, if you go to this website, it might take like 30 seconds to load because I'm on free hosting. But it's going to show you a giant image that I have made in Photoshop. And if you click on this giant image, it will take you to this playlist, a step-by-step playlist on understanding Swift. And they're like, there's week 1, week 2, week 3. They're kind of modeled after my General Assembly syllabus. So a lot of students seem to find that to be helpful, because a lot of people we notice are very interested in Swift. And at USC, we have a focus on Objective-C for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into that. But if you're really interested in Swift, I highly recommend my YouTube channel. And so there's that. And then something else is, so this is an iOS class, and it would be strange if I didn't show you like what apps have I done, what apps have I built. So I built 2 apps. The first app is Inspire. I'm someone that really likes motivational content and inspirational content. And I thought, why not build an app where there's just a community of people that inspire and motivate each other? So you can post like your favorite quote, your favorite picture, your favorite video that inspires you. And this was my final project for ITP 342. What you're going to see isn't what I turned into Trina. It's a year later. I spent a year on and off. Like I had 2 months of like super intense development time, and then I have 3 months like life came in and like I had to do something else. So it's about a year of development time, and I decided to launch an app store. So this is Inspire. So don't feel like you have to make something like this for your final project. This took me like a year of on and off time to make. So this is Inspire. So, I built an app that was kind of cool, and I spent like a weekend learning like iMovie, or like, yeah, it was iMovie, and it's really easy to just put a video together. My second app that I built I was really interested in video game development, and coming into it, I was a little intimidated. I thought you needed like a PhD in physics to like understand, to understand acceleration and like, the forces and the vectors and all those mathematical underpinnings of building a video game. I thought it was hard. But it turns out it's not that hard, because there's these physics engines that are built for you that allow you to just focus on development. So you don't have to worry about the underlying math. You really don't have to do like matrix multiplication at all, right? So I took the class here, ITP 382 with Michael Sheenan. He works at Nick Games, I think. And I spent a year with that as well. So I collaborated with a team of people, and then we built this game called Protect Your Jewels. I'll let the video explain itself. So that is Protect Your Jewels. Those are like the two apps I have in the App Store that are like my own. And you can download them for 99 cents. Please download them. Funny thing is, like, every interview that I go to, people have to see like the quality of my work, right? So they're kind of like forced to download these apps. And I was at DV, and I had an interview with the director of engineering, and he asked me about any apps, and naturally I showed them, you know, Inspire and Protect Your Jewels. And he searched it on the App Store, and he looked at it, and he's like, "You're making me pay you like $2?" And I said, "Well, you have to know how good I am, right?" So I got $2 out of that interview, and every interview that I've been to. So cool. All right, so that's a little bit about me, my background. Let's get into the rest of the slides, and then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll go into Xcode. All right, so why learn mobile development? I don't really need to sell this too much. It's the demand is really there. There's a huge demand for iOS developers specifically, and let me put a footnote in that. There's a really huge demand for good iOS developers. There's a lot of people who, you know, maybe they're self-taught or maybe they just don't care, but there's a lot of bad iOS developers out there. There's a lot of bad developers out there. And if you really take the time to really understand what's going on, if you slow down a few steps and like really understand what's going on, I promise you that you're going to move very fast in development, and you're going to be deeply respected for what you know, and you're going to be paid a lot. For me, like, taking this class was ground zero. It had me understand, you know, iOS development is hard. There's a lot of moving parts. There's Objective-C is a strange language. And for me, this class really demystified a lot of it. So I can promise you that, you know, a lot of doors are going to open for you if you choose this route of being a mobile developer, especially iOS development. And being really good at what I do just really means like studying and taking it slow and understanding what's going on. And for me, I'm almost always the youngest person in the room because of what I know, because of how much I seek to understand what's going on. So like teaching, for example, right? There's probably not a teacher that's younger than me. I hope not. And when I'm at DV, I was a senior engineer. I got offered a senior engineer position, and we were at orientation, and I met another senior engineer, and I said, "Oh, you're a senior engineer too. What's your background?" And he's like, 10 years at Microsoft. I'm like, "Whoa, okay. I just graduated from USC." So, you know, taking your time to really study the fundamentals, it's really going to accelerate your career. You know, these numbers, you're not going to have a hard time. You know, you don't have to reach very far to look for convincing numbers in being an iOS developer, right? Projected salary increase of 9%. If you're a senior engineer, you're almost guaranteed like 6 figures. What else do we have? There's a ton of job postings. It's the hottest jobs in 2016. There's a huge demand. Let's see, what else here? More than 70% of Fortune 500 companies are, you know, utilizing mobile technology, so they need iOS engineers. The next few slides, I'm not going to be too proud to show because this is the market share for mobile platforms, and Android is a little bit dominant with 85% of the mobile market. So, you know, if you can't really go into this game and be a player anymore. It's dominated by iOS or Android, right? Windows came in with Nokia. That was the worst decision they made. They wrote off billions of dollars. They fired a ton of employees from Nokia. I think 2/3 of the employees were fired from Nokia. So the winning sides are really Android and iOS. Different graphs, same information about, you know, the operating system market share, with Android being on top. Let's see, what else here? Just about Android, don't really care. Let's see here. So what's interesting about iOS is that iPhone sales are actually declining, but when Apple introduced the 6 Plus and the bigger sizes, they actually saw an increase in demand. So a lot of people, when the iPhone 6 Plus first came out, they didn't believe in it. They thought it was too big. But it turns out that Apple has a strong bump in revenue because of the iPhone sales. Yeah. So Windows, let's not talk about Windows. It's a very sad story. They have like just like very tiny market share, and no one is expecting them to like increase in their market share. Just don't go with Windows, please, for your own sake. BlackBerry, another player where we are not going to talk about. Let's see. So let's take a second to appreciate these numbers. Apple, the App Store opened 2008, so that's 9 years ago, and it started off with 500 apps. And in 3 months' time, in 90 days, it had 100 million downloads, and the number of apps increased 6 times, sixfold in 3 months. In 2009, they hit 2 billion downloads. So you have 2 billion downloads. 4 years later, you have 48 billion more downloads. In 4 years' time, you have what is this? You have 25 times the download, and that's 2 billion. That's a huge number. What's this? So a year after, it's 85 billion. 1 year later, you increased by 35 billion downloads. These are astronomical numbers. That's really really exciting to be an app developer. So these are some numbers. Google Play Store actually launched in the same time as Apple. They also have a lot of downloads as well. What else? Okay, so let's see here. So this is an interesting graph. This is a typical graph comparing iOS and Android, where you see that, because you saw that Google Play had 85% market share, they have a lot more, because of that, they have a lot more downloads, because they have a lot more devices out there, so there's a lot more downloads, and that's reasonable. And a lot of people look at this, they look at the number of downloads, and they look at the market share that Android has, and they tell you, this is where it's at, this is where you should focus in, because look at these numbers. And it's true that Android has a bigger market share, they have a lot more downloads, but do you care more about the downloads, or do you care more about the revenue? Because it seems that iOS apps and companies are making much more money than people who are developing for Android. So the numbers are here, the downloads are here, but the money is actually right there. So when you're developing an app, and do you care more about making revenue first? Do you care more about that? Or do you care more about downloads? Right, so that's one consideration when you decide to go iOS first or Android first. All right, so this is the same slides, just a little bit bigger. And you can look at these slides in your own time, and these are just numbers that you can look in your own time. I'm not going to drown you with details. All right, so let's just get this out of the way. When we talk about operating systems, Apple has 4 primary operating systems: iOS, tvOS, macOS, and watchOS. It used to be called OS X, so that's the old logo, but it's macOS now. For the iOS operating system, anything that begins with an I is powered by the iOS operating system. So your iPod Touch, your iPhones, your iPads, your iPad mini, your iPad Pro, those are all hardware devices powered by this operating system. Anything that begins with a Mac is powered by the macOS operating system. So your Mac Pro, your Mac Mini, your MacBook Pro, your iMac, they're all powered by that OS. Anything that begins with a watch, well, there's only one Apple Watch, is powered by the watchOS operating system. And the Apple TV is powered by the tvOS operating system. So a common question I get from a lot of people is, if I spend a lot of time learning iOS, is it hard for me to learn tvOS or macOS? Is it hard for me to build these apps? And the question is, it's super simple. They're really, really similar. The differences are at the operating system layer and not so much at the development layer. So the reason why they have different operating system is because they want to optimize for the hardware, right? This is really powerful. This, not so much. right? It's a much dumber version of your Mac Pro. It has less CPU, it has less storage. The network card is like weaker. So at the operating system level, they have to make optimizations for that. They can't just write one OS for different hardware devices. So that's why there's this division. But for us as app developers, that's mostly abstracted away from us. We don't have to worry too much about the different OSs. So this slide is just to show you there's a lot of devices out there. There's actually a lot of iPhones, a lot of iPads. So what's exciting for me, what's super exciting for me in being an engineer and being a developer is that if you really go deep into this and you start, practicing your craft and doing this as a profession or in your own free time, you start to notice that the world's your playground, that there isn't anything you can't influence. There isn't anything that you can't create, right? Our society has so many interfaces that are driven by software, right? Even things that you don't think are driven by software are, so like traffic lights, right? They're driven, they don't have an interface, but they're driven by embedded systems, which is driven by a program. So, it gets really fun as an engineer when you realize that the world's your playground and there's nothing you can't create. If you want to do home automation, Apple offers HomeKit. If you're interested in cloud computing, Apple offers CloudKit. If you're interested in building, so there's a few people that here that are interested in health apps, or your favorite app was like health apps, right? There's HealthKit. Apple has that technology package for you. If you want to build a video game, Apple has SpriteKit, right? Also for augmented reality, they also have ARKit, or it uses SpriteKit. All right, so our mission at the surface level is to develop iOS apps. I really try to do much more than that. I deeply care about your successes, and I try to go above and beyond to like help you in your personal projects or your careers or whatever you guys want to do. But at the surface level, we're here for iOS development. Our focus is going to be on Objective-C for reasons. We'll talk about them next week. But there's a lot of reasons why we want to focus Objective-C here at USC. So just at a very high level, Objective-C has been around for 3 decades, for 30 years. That's a lot for software. That's 30 years of documentation, of code, of resources. And Swift was just introduced a few years ago. So companies like Facebook, companies like Snapchat, companies like Pandora, their entire code base is Objective-C. So if you learn Swift here and you're trying to get a job at like a popular tech company, chances are they're not using Swift. So there's a lot of reasons why we choose to focus on Objective-C. But your class is special because there has been a huge demand for learning Swift. So Trina and I have decided last week that we're gonna put Swift more in the spotlight. So you guys are gonna get to understand the Swift language and the Swift syntax. But the focus of this, the labs, the exams are gonna be on Objective-C, but you guys are gonna get exposure to that. So it's like, there's no pressure for you to like really learn it, but if you're interested in your own personal projects, you know how the language works. So at our part, in our end, we have to modify like about 1,000 slides and translate them both to support Objective-C and Swift. We're done with half of it. So if you guys catch anything, please let us know. When I translate it, I always run it through Xcode and try to compile it and make sure it works. All right, so prereq. We really encourage you guys to, we don't just put prereqs to make it harder for you guys. There's actually a reason why you need to have a fundamental understanding of like computer science, object-oriented programming, arrays, lists, like hash maps, these data structures. They're very important building blocks to understanding iOS. So we're not gonna really spend a deep dive into data structures. We're gonna assume you know it, and we're gonna give you the Objective-C equivalent or the Swift equivalent. And you should take it and run with it. All right, so I'm not Trina, but here's her contact information. That's me. You can call me Bennett, or you can call me Professor Lee. That's cool too. So Trina actually put this in her slide first. She said, "Never ask me when my office hours are." And I thought, that's kind of mean. And a lot of students actually ask me for my office hours, And they're actually posted in Piazza and Blackboard. They were also posted on the ITP website, but I'm having a hard time updating it. But it's on Piazza and Blackboard. So now I'm putting it because, you know, like it's out there. The information's there. It's on Piazza and Blackboard. So please like look at those places for when our office hours are. One thing about this class is a lot of students, when they come into class, the first thing they want to know is like, is it hard? And I would say like this class it's hard because the nature of iOS and Objective-C is hard. But that doesn't mean we're not there to help you. The support systems are always going to be there. So if you guys are getting a bad grade, it's not because it's hard, it's because you're not putting in the effort. And one example I can give you is, so Jason, me, and there's also another TA coming in next week, Adam, Trina, the other professor, Soraya, which is another TA. We all have different office hours. So you have 5 people with different office hours spread throughout the week to help support you. And we have Piazza. Let me show you guys Piazza. You guys have used Piazza before, right? It's pretty common practice. So it's kind of like a Stack Overflow for our class. So let me show you Piazza. This is not our class, this is our class. So this is Piazza. You can post questions there. If you're gonna copy and paste code, make sure it's private, just so that other people don't copy your code. We'll talk about that later on. But Piazza's there. I'm always accessible via email or office hours. There's 5 instructors here to help you at different times. So that gives you a sense of the level of care we have for you guys and the support systems that are in place. So for those of you guys who really care about grades, you're gonna get the A if you try. If you're gonna know when you're not trying, and it's gonna be very obvious that when you get a B, you're not gonna be surprised. So there's that. So the class is 1 hour and 50 minutes, 2 times a week. I think you guys are pretty sure about this. Let's see here. What else? So Trina's section is earlier in the afternoon. My section is later just because I have a full-time job. I always try to make it worth it for you guys. I know it's late, and you know sometimes people can get hungry, so you guys can bring snacks. Probably not like a meal because it might be distracting to other people, but you guys can bring snacks, or I recommend you eat before this class because it's pretty late. So you're more welcome to do that. Here's the holidays because students and me, you know, we always forget when the holidays are, so it's nice to have a slide dedicated to that. These are the days that you don't have to be in class. So this is the distribution of the grade. Another reason why this class, you know, you have, it's not hard to get an A because 50% of it is based on assignments. If you do your homework, you know, that's half of your grade. That's much more generous than a lot of other classes here. So, so we have 2 exams, a midterm and basically 2. They're not like, it's not a midterm and a final, it's just like 2 exams. They're not cumulative. But some things are naturally cumulative, right? So if you learn what an integer is, right, or Boolean, like that doesn't mean you don't have to do any Boolean or integer stuff like in exam 2. So they're not cumulative in the sense that we're not focusing on the topics that are in the first exam. So you don't have to relearn everything you learned in exam 1. Final project gets really exciting. This is when you get to choose your destiny and choose what you want to build. And you can run it through me and I can tell you that's not ambitious enough, or like that's way too ambitious. But at the end of the day, this is your moment to build like your app. You get to take everything that you learn and have your app come to life. This is pretty exciting. Grades. So the numbers are pretty clear cut. You might think this is a non-issue, but this actually happens a lot of times, strangely. So we round grade off to the 2nd decimal place. So if you get an 89.99, it's a B+, but if you get 89.995, it's rounded upwards to an A-. You might think that's not an issue, but there's a lot of students who have a lot of close calls. So there's our rounding issue. It's final. That said. And interesting thing about this class is that, so attendance is not mandatory, but I'm telling you, like every class is super important. We cover a lot of like topics in every class. And if you have 3 or less non-excuse absences, will bump your percentage point by 1. And you might think that's not a big deal, but just like this, it ends up affecting a lot of students. A lot of students are always like on the border for some strange reason. So they end up getting the boost or they don't get the boost. So there's that. But you know, we would some cases we would excuse the absence. So like if you have an interview or if you have a medical emergency, that's fine. All right, so here's clear and cut the exam dates for you. Pretty straightforward. You can use this as reference. Homework would be posted on Blackboard as assignments. Sadly, we're not using Git to submit homework. You're just gonna zip your Xcode project. Make sure you zip it correctly and post it on Blackboard. So you just zip it up and then post it on Blackboard. And our policies with grading is that if you have an assignment that's up to 3 days late, if it's already late and it's up to 3 days late, we're gonna cut 50% off. And if it's more than 3 days late, then you don't get the credit for the homework. So we understand that you guys are busy people, and you know you have things that come up in your life that aren't expected. So we're pretty generous when we give you this 3-day this free pass for late assignments. So if you're really like if the stars don't align and you have like all your midterms at one time, or if you have an interview, you have 2 interviews at once, and you have to study for it, that's okay. You can use the late pass. Don't ask me for 2 late passes, please. Like, there's only 1 late pass, and that's more than what other classes have done. All right, so it's your responsibility to keep your assignments as always have them as reference. You guys are free to like use the ITP computers. ITP, if you guys have PCs, ITP also lends laptops, or you can work on Xcode projects like iOS apps at SAL or other computers that have Xcode. But always make sure to save your work. Don't just leave your project in an iMac and just expect it to be there. I think it wipes it out every time you log out. So always make sure that you have a copy of your homework. Questions, please post Piazza. The one thing I ask of you guys when asking a question is like, sure, Jason and I can solve them. That's fine. But try to make an effort at solving the problem. And that's really important, because people that don't make an effort at solving the problem and they delegate the hard work to like other people, they don't fare too well in life. There's a lot of engineers that we recruited at DV. They have a really great resume, and when we hire them, they kept asking people for help. We're paying these people to solve problems, not to give us problems to solve for them, right? So you really want to make this habit, at least at the university level, where like it's really hurting you, and when you go out and work in like these jobs, these issues would propagate, they'll extrapolate, they'll become more serious. And we fired people because they just can't do the work, right? They can't ask the technical leader to keep doing the work for them. So we want you to at least make an effort, and not just, if you see red, you just freak out and you just hand Jason the laptop and tell him to fix it. That's not really what we're here for. We're not here we're here to guide you, to help you understand what's going on, but please make the effort. And this is why it's not a typical, iOS class where, you just read the material, you just do the work. We want you to really understand. At least I want you to really understand, because I see the value in that a lot. Cool. Makeup exams, no makeup exams, unless you have like an emergency that's documented, then we can offer makeup exams. So Trina passes a roster around the classroom. I like to actually get to know you guys on a first name basis. So I'm gonna call out your names, and instead of passing a roster at the start of every class. And if your name is not called, come to me at the end of class. Don't assume that I know you. Like, just because I know who you are, don't assume that I marked you for attendance if you're late. So some students have made that assumption, and it ended up hurting them when it's time to bump their percentage point. So please, like, come to me after class. Don't assume that, I might know you, but there's 1,000 things going on up here. So I might not mark you. All right, so ITP has open labs. If you guys don't have a MacBook, ITP offers these resources for you, because USC is rich. All right, so Viterbi honor code. So these are the things, it might sound kind of cheesy that, you should practice these things, but these are issues that really extrapolate in the real world when people don't have integrity or they're not responsible, or they just don't care. And projects have been delayed, jobs have been lost, money has been spent. So you want to, practice these things here at the university level. All right, so at USC, we have very low tolerance for cheating. So if you are suspected of cheating, you can't shake that off. So if we see that, your code is a one-to-one match or a very similar match to someone else's, we will have to file a report to SJAX. So students have in the past suffered from this. So please take this seriously, especially here. So SJAX links. So part of being at USC is like what you might take for granted and you might not be completely aware of is like we're in this community, we're in this enclosed circle where there's a lot of helpful resources for if you're suffering like personal issues. So there's a lot of communities out there if you're having a really hard time, and I've been with students that have a really hard time, personal reasons, or they have too much stress. Like this is a really supportive community, and please take advantage of that. There's a lot of organizations, counseling services here to help you out. And if you guys aren't aware of them, so Trina posted these, there are links for you guys here. Just know that we care. So there's more links here. All right, and we are gonna take a 5-minute break, and then we'll finish off with Xcode right now. So you guys can use the restroom, talk to each other. Yeah.
I have a question. Congratulations. So I've already actually enrolled in the tutorial section for CS classes, and their final project due is November to December 11th, which is like a overlap for this class.
Okay, we can make something work. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just make sure to bring it up to attention closer to that time, and then we'll make something work, like a week or two before. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to add my name to the roster.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, your name wasn't originally from the roster?
Yeah, I signed up for the. I don't. Oh, there it is. Actually, sorry. Kevin Blocker, 31.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. You're checked. Thanks.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Let's see.
How does this class differ from 341 in terms of like benefits?
What's 341?
It's the same thing by Android.
Oh, it's pretty similar. It's just, I guess, the teaching style of the instructor, and you learn a whole new IDE, right? You learn Android Studio, you learn a whole new language, Java, you learn a whole new SDK, which is Android. So the environment is completely switched. The way iOS thinks about things and reason about development is super different than iOS.
I don't use Apple products. I don't believe in them. I don't.
Yeah.
Know that I should take a whole class on it if I don't really think.
Yeah, then maybe you should consider Android. If like
It didn't fit my schedule this semester. I didn't know there was a difference.
yeah, I mean, there's like little pieces. There's like if there's a Venn diagram, there's definitely commonalities, but they're pretty different in like the design. So there's some similarities, but they're pretty different in terms of like how everything works. So if you think, I mean, yeah, if you're not a believer in Apple, you know, yeah, that's totally okay. No hard feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That probably be like a better idea.
I think so. I mean, if you believe in if you're strongly against technology, it wouldn't make sense to like learn it. And I think if your goal is to hope to get this and understand, hit the ground running with Android, probably would be very different. Yeah. Yeah. So I know how to develop. I develop apps on both, and they're very different approaches. So yeah. Cool. All right, we have 30 more minutes. Let's jump right to it and get back to iOS development. So I'm going to ask you guys to do one favor for me. And I do this for all my classes. So I just want to take a class picture when you guys are all happy and you're fresh. And so I'm going to do a class picture really quick. And that's a favor for me. Thank you. So I'm going to be in this corner. I'm not going to take a picture of myself. I just want to take a picture of you guys. So pretend like you just had the best class ever. 1, 2, 3. There's a big MacBook in the. Okay, well that's okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's better. Yeah, I can see your face now. That's what matters. Jason, you could be in the picture. Do a class picture. All right. Cool. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. I'm gonna take this side. I completely neglected this side. Cheese. No, now you're in. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay. Thank you. So I do this for all my classes. Cool. So let's jump to it. Let's jump to Xcode. Actually, I have one announcement to make before we jump into this. I forgot to tell you about next week. So there's an announcement for next week. So next week, I'm going to Italy, specifically Milan. So we're going to Milan because the client's there. So I won't be here next week. It's a full week trip. So what we're going to do is Trina's going to come in Monday to teach you guys Monday's class, and I'm going to do a video lecture for Wednesday. So there's no physical class on Wednesday, but it's very important that you watch the video lecture. Really important. So Monday, we're going to go over auto layout. Basically, how do you design interfaces that are responsive? And Wednesday, we're going to go over the Swift programming language, which I'm pretty sure everyone's excited about, as well as the fundamentals of like object-oriented programming. So I'm going to do a video lecture on that. So there's that. Other than that, I'll be available, email, Piazza, anything. But I'll just be out of town for work. Cool. All right. So, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about my project as like the semester progresses. So let's go into Xcode. So when you're building software, there's a lot of like sometimes there's inconsistencies. So it's going to work on my computer, but maybe not work on your computer, or maybe work on her computer, but not his computer. Sometimes the reason is versioning conflicts. Maybe you don't have the up-to-date version of Xcode. Maybe your Mac OS is like Snow Leopard. So just to put it out there, these are the versions that we're working with. All right. So let's get started with just the flow of Xcode. So I'm just going to do a demo and walk you through Xcode. All right, so let me delete that. Delete that. Cool. So what is Xcode? Xcode is an integrated development environment. People call it an IDE. Let's see. I'll fill in the blanks for the slides. So an integrated development environment. So what does it mean? It's a really fancy name. And if you're in computer science, you know that we give a lot of fancy terms to a lot of things. An integrated development environment just means that it's a fancy text. Well, it's not a text editor. It's like much better than a text editor, right? It has syntax highlighting. It has simulators. So you can actually run the iPhone or the iPad operating system on Xcode. It has testing tools. It has compilers, right? Because Objective-C needs to be compiled. It's a compile language. It needs to be compiled to binary. So you don't want to do that in the command line like you guys do for your C++ classes. So that's compilers. So it's a really rich software. It's basically right here. That's a Xcode. So it's the de facto software you use for iOS, tvOS, macOS, watchOS development. That's all you need. You don't need 500 tools. They're all in Xcode. So let's try to navigate around Xcode. It could be a little bit scary, you know, like Photoshop is to me. So you click on Xcode, you open it up, it's going to tell you what the version is. Notice that I'm on 8.3.3, and in parentheses, that's the build number. So on the right-hand side is my recent projects that I've been working on. And on the left-hand side is different ways you can start a project. So we're going to talk about Playground next week. Playground is a way for you to explore the Swift program language. But if you're going to build an app, you're going to use an Xcode project. You're going to create your first Xcode project by either clicking here, right here, or you can go to File, New Project. So you have options. Or if you're like a command keyboard shortcut person, it's like Shift Command N. So I'm just gonna click this. So let's create a new Xcode project. Let's minimize these things to minimize distractions. All right, so the first thing you're going to be offered is a template for building your app. And Apple's intention for doing this is to make your app development a little bit faster, like 5% faster, by giving you this template for building things. 100% of the time, I've used single-viewed application, which is the simplest template, because I don't want code in there that I don't understand or that's written for me. So that's always the best way to go. I used to say 99.9%, but I realized I'd never use anything else. So I'm confident 100% I use single view application. All right. So let's walk through all the different options. Product name is the name of your app. Let's call this my first app. Terrible name, but my first app. And then team is the organization that you belong to. So when you're submitting to the App Store, Apple needs to know what team does this app belong to. And if you don't have an Apple ID, you don't have a team, that's okay. So you can see that this is my personal account, and I have BCG. I'm part of the BCG team as well. I can distribute apps on their team account. So I'll just say I'm on my own personal team. Why not? The organization name is actually, let's do BCG. It's fine. It's okay. They're not here. So organization name is the name of your company. If you don't have a company, you can just put your name. That's fine. Organization identifier is basically the convention for an organization identifier is if you're a company and if you have a URL, our URL is bcgdb.com. That's our website, right? So if you do https www.bcg.com. The convention is to take your URL, which is unique to you, and flip it. And that's called a reverse DNS convention. This is a very popular way, a very common way to ensure uniqueness, because you're only going to have one URL, right? You're a company, and I don't know why they flipped it. I really don't. So they call it a reverse DNS, so they flipped it. So it's com.bcgdb. So with com.bcg.db, they also take in your app name and they create the bundle ID. The bundle identifier is your truly unique way to identify your app in the App Store. Every app in the store has one unique bundle ID, and that's the combination of your organization ID and your app name. So it's a reverse DNS convention to ensure uniqueness. So this allows me to, even if I'm inside the BCG DB domain, I can have my own personal my first app. So that ensures uniqueness. So if you're Facebook or Snapchat, you're only gonna have your own bundle ID. It's one. You can upload. You probably can upload an app that has com.facebook. Like Facebook app or something. All right. So language of choice. Pick your poison. You can choose Objective-C or Swift. Or you choose Objective-C. And devices, you can choose to write code for an iPhone, an iPad, or both for an iPad and an iPhone. Core data, never check this box. I hate core data. Yeah, okay, so testing, we're gonna go over testing in later classes. You don't have to check that box. Anything in here is not set in stone. If you feel like, oh, like I want to design for an iPad, you can change it later on. If you decide, oh, I want to use Swift, you can change it later on. If you decide that this is a terrible name for my app, you can change that later on. So nothing in here is set in stone. You can always change it. It might be like 2 or 3 clicks away, but you can change it. Apple doesn't make it hard for you to change it. The next thing you're going to do is find a place in your file system to save your project to. So a hack that I have, a secret I have, is I have a folder of things that I don't really care about. So I call it Playground. And these are all the technologies that I'm messing around with. And I have an iOS folder, and I just save it in there. All right, so my first app already exists. Replace, sure. So I've used that name before. All right, so I can imagine this is scary. A lot of buttons, a lot of panels, a lot of screens. Let's try to navigate through this. The smartest way to navigate through this is so let me go through the slides really quick. Okay, so this is everything we went through. The smartest way to navigate an interface this complex is to first break them down into big components. Every region is here for a reason. So on the left-hand side, anything to do with navigating your file system or your project is in the navigator area on the left-hand side. Anything to do with debugging, if you want to read the console logs, or if you want to inspect the state of variables, or if you want to step over, step into, step out, the debugging console is right at the bottom. Anything that you select, you can do different things too, right? So if I select a file that's pure code, I might do different things than if I select a file that's pure interface. So it's you need to have something that's context aware. So that's where the utility panel comes into place. The utility panel changes depending on what you focus on. And the main canvas right here, this is the center of attention, is your editor area. This is where you edit your interface. This is where you edit your code. So this is the main panel. On the top, you have a toolbar that allows you to run your app, and to select what simulator to run your app in. So that's a very high level navigation, debugging, context-aware utility panel, and the editor area. Am I going too fast? Okay. It's okay if I'm going too fast. You can slow me down, or you can play this video in slow-mo when you rewatch it. Okay, this is like a super old Xcode view. It's like, this is pretty old. Okay, so these are 2 things. They're explaining the same thing. Okay, what else? Don't have to worry about that. If you want to build interface files, there's 3 file types for building interface. One ends with .storyboard. The other ends with .nib. The third ends with .xib. It's I don't know why, but people pronounce this as nib. So you think it would be zib, but then people pronounce it as nib. So it's based on historical purposes. These are 3 file types. If you see any of these file types, it has to do with user interface. So that's all you gotta know about that for now. Let's do something here. Let's try to navigate this. Cool. So this is the navigator where I can see all the files that are in my Xcode project. If I select appdelegate.h, appdelegate.m, I see code in my canvas area. If I click on main.storyboard, I'm gonna see something completely different. And that is the visual, we call it the interface builder. This is something that's not given to you in like regular text editors. That's why this is an IDE. It has something much richer than that. Fun story is my CS 101 professor, his name shall remain anonymous, but he actually used Microsoft Word to write his code for us, and we lost all respect for him. It was really bad. So don't use Microsoft Word to write your code. So this is interface builder. This is your inside of Xcode. This allows you to build your interface builder. So right here, notice that the utility panel is different if I select main.storyboard and if I select viewcontroller.m. It's context sensitive. It depends on what you're selecting. And if I really just, I'm in the zone right now and I just want to focus on the code. I want everything out of my way. I can go to the top right and hide these panels, hide the navigator area, hide the utilities area, and now I'm just focused on my code. I don't have to think about anything else. You might notice that the debug area is not there. If you want to bring it up, there's this button in the middle that allows you to hide or show the debug area. If you feel like you need more space for a debug area, you can also, drag this. Okay, now it's gonna get out of the way. What else can I show you? So if sometimes more often than not, you need to look at 2 files at the same time because you're awesome like that. So what you want to do is you want to have 2 files at the same time in the canvas area. You can click on this double ring here. It's called a assistant editor. You click on that, and it shows you, double the code, right? If you had some code in this file that influences the code on the next file, you can see them side to side like that. All right, and let's say you're getting dizzy because of this, and you want to go back to your regular view. Then you can click on this button, which is the standard editor. And just a side note, if you guys are confused at any point in time, like raise your hand and Jason would come to your rescue, or you can just tap on him because he can't see the people behind him. So if you guys need any help personally in your computer, a less disruptive way would be to talk to the TAs. All right. Okay, so there's that button. So right here, let's go to the top left in the toolbar. What's cool about what's cool about Xcode is that you want to design an app that works on a 7 Plus and a 7 and a 6 and different screen sizes, but you don't want to buy all of them just to test them, right? So Apple gives you the simulator, and the power is that you can virtualize your operating system. You can virtualize the hardware. So by clicking on the top left right here, you can select your, if you want to see like, what would my app look like on an iPad Pro 9.7 inch? What would my app look like on an iPhone 5? You can use the simulator. So I'm building apps on my, I think this is an iPhone 6. And the BCG partner constantly complains to me about like what's going wrong because he has an iPhone 4, I think, or an iPhone 5 or something that's like that I would never have. And I had to run a simulator to test like what his perspective would be. So it's very helpful if you guys don't have the hardware device. And these things are expensive. You don't want to like have such a big cost when developing. You want to get a sense of what it looks like on the other devices. So let's try to run something on an iPhone 7. And I'm going to click the play. The play is universal, right? A universal triangle symbol for building something. And it's going to compile. It's going to take the source code, convert it to binary, package it all up, take your resources. It's going to launch the simulator. It's an entire operating system that is trying to launch right now. and I'm just trying to stall time as it's doing this. And it's loading the operating system as indicated by this spinning wheel. And then it's going to launch my first app, which will appear in 5 seconds. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that's my first app. I know it's not that impressive, but it's a screen, it's something, right? So you might notice that this is too big. This is way too big because it doesn't fit my computer, and you guys are gonna run into this issue. So you can actually scale this. So if you go to simulator, you click on it, you go to hardware, let's see here. I'm just gonna cheat a little bit and type scale. Okay, it's right here. Okay, so window, scale, you can scale this to different percentages. So if I want this to actually fit my screen, maybe 100% is too big. I'm gonna select 50%, so that's smaller. A keyboard shortcut you can have is Command 1, Command 2, Command 3, Command 4, Command 5. So that's different ways you can scale your simulator. All right. So let's try to play around. We're gonna have a very visual class right now. We're not gonna do code this week. Everything's gonna be super visual. So we're in Interface Builder. You go to your utilities panel on the right-hand side, and in the bottom of this utility panel, you click on this button. It's called the Object Library. So these are all the visual objects you can drag and drop into Interface Builder. A common misconception about iOS development is all you do is like code all day. You don't see anything visual. That's very far from the truth. You actually have a very rich visual editor. You don't need Photoshop. You have to design your interfaces in Storyboard. So if I were to show you, don't tell anyone I showed you this, even though it's being recorded. Just don't say anything, please. Okay, so if I were to show you like an app, right? A more well-developed app, and I show you one of our storyboards. The bigger the app, the slower they load, but hopefully it's gonna get there. Come on, Xcode. Cool. So our app is not a bunch of question marks. It's just gonna load. Okay, that's a little bit better, right? All right, so this is the current app I'm working on. It's called Kinesso. I'll explain more later because we don't have time. But you can see that it's very rich in nature visually. This is how you actually design your app. This is called Storyboard because you can see that you have different screens. This is a splash screen. This is a splash screen. This is like the onboarding screen. This is the sign in, sign up screen. And this is how you configure your vehicle. This storyboard is supposed to tell the story of your app, of every transition in the user experience. So that's why they call it storyboard. Contrast that with Android, they don't have storyboards. So it's very hard to make sense of how these screens connect, of how these transitions happen, when all you have is code and pieces of interfaces. So Apple invented this to help developers very easily visualize the progression of their app, the story of their app. And storyboard is really helpful, yeah.
So are these all like static images, or do you get to like design
yeah.
like cool
So these are static images, but if I have an image right here, I can write code that changes that element. Right? I can write code that influences that. So yeah, so they're static, but they can also be changed dynamically. Yeah, good question. So another reason why I don't like Android, right, I just mentioned, is that they don't have storyboard in the Android Studio. I also developed like a few Android apps, so I can answer questions about that. But this is very, very nice. Have you guys used Sketch before? Yeah, so I think Sketch was inspired by storyboard, and that makes this transition very easy for designer to translate ideas to Xcode people, right? They look really similar. So that's enough about that. Let's go back to our boring single screen app. All right, don't have much time. but I'm gonna try to squeeze in a little bit here. So I'm gonna scroll down my object library, and I'm seeing things that are more familiar to me. So I see a label. Let's drag and drop a label. I see segmented control. Let's drag and drop. Part of your journey as an iOS developer is just playing around with this and understanding what these elements are. So, I see a text field. I can drag and drop a text field and a slider. I can drag and drop that and a switch. Why not? So I see another stepper. Why not have 2 steppers? And let's actually run my app. Let's run it. And so I was at the utilities panel, object library. I found a bunch of objects, and I dragged and dropped it into my screen. And now we have the world's most confusing app, the world's most useless app. So, but what's cool about it is that I can actually mess with these elements. They're actually interactive. They're responding to me. They're alive. And that's no work on my part. I just drag and drop. So this is really, really powerful. And I just want to show you one more thing. We have 3 minutes. I just want to show you one more thing right now. I'm going to blow your mind by dragging and dropping a map right here. And I actually have to do one more thing. You don't have to worry about it. I just have to include the library for maps right here. All right. So it took me 2 seconds, and I have an actual map, right? So I can I can double tap, right? I can double tap. I can pinch to zoom with this. I'll show you guys how to do that later, but I can pinch to zoom, and it took me 2 seconds to have an actual map in the palm of my hands, right? This is unbelievable, like, awesomeness. And I'm glad someone, I think you're the first person to appreciate this. A lot of students, when I show this to them, they're like, okay, that's cool. But this is like amazing, right? We're developers. This is like hard to do. So I just want to show you guys the power of user interface and how much you can actually do with Interface Builder. A lot of our focus, it's like 40% Interface Builder, 60% code. We focus a lot on design because Apple really cares about it. So it would naturally make sense for them to build a tool for developers to also care about interface. All right, so it's 8:50. So I'll see you guys Wednesday.